Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. And now that we're about a month into the NHL season, we know what teams might end up really stinking this year. I'm looking at you, the Calgary Flames. I thought that it would be fun for me to drop my mock draft 1.0. Today, we are going to be looking at just the top 10. We eventually work our way up. The next one in like a month and a half, 2 months from now, probably the top 15, then 20, then 25, then the eventual full first round. And we're like a month out from the draft. They usually end up doing like 6 or 7 mock drafts throughout the season. And yeah, this is the current order for the 2026 draft that we're to end today. Unfortunately, like the bottom 8 through 17 teams like basically tied, but this is just how Tankathon had it. The Calgary Flames selecting first overall, St. Louis Blues kind of unexpectedly at second, the San Jose Sharks, Minnesota's playing horrible, Vancouver, Nashville, Boston, Los Angeles, Ottawa doesn't have their pick because of the Donov when they did not disclose that he had a no trade clause, so that pick doesn't exist. As a result, we're doing the New York Rangers at 10 and Philadelphia at 11. And yeah, with Ottawa, they're just not going to have the 9th pick. If you remember, I think it was the Arizona Coyotes in 2021. They had the 10th or 11th pick in that draft. It doesn't get deleted. Like everybody just moves up one. That pick just doesn't exist. So we're going 1 through 8 and then 10, 11. So without further ado, and again, this is what I think the teams would do in this situation based on how these players are being viewed right now. Not my own personal rankings. I did one of those before the season. I'll probably have an updated personal rankings in 3 to 4 weeks or something like that. But at first overall, the Calgary Flames from Penn State University, they are going to be going with Mr. Gavin McKenna. And yeah, I understand some chatter about potentially a Stenberg, Verhoff going ahead of a Gavin McKenna. And maybe you could convince me if there was such a positional need. I am a best player available guy. But with the Calgary Flames, they just got to go the best forward. And when looking at Gavin McKenna, the fact that he's a Western Canadian kid, he is the clear pick here. Has he lived quite up to expectations at Penn State to start? No, if we're going to be honest, he has 13 points in 10 games, is 4th on his own team in scoring, but still very productive for a 17-year-old to be that much above a point per game. It's not Celebrini, it's not Fantilli, but he's looking better in recent games. And yeah, when looking at a Gavin McKenna, I think that he will still be a 90 to 100 point winger. I think the elusiveness, the slipperiness that I always talk about with Gavin McKenna, it's very reminiscent of kind of a Nikita Kucherov. And when you look at the Calgary Flames, they got Zane Parekh in terms of their potential franchise defenseman, although they're handling him pretty horribly right now, playing him 13 minutes a night. They got Dustin Wolf in terms of their franchise goaltender. They just need that true difference maker forward. Even if Gavin McKenna does not live up to that generational tag that some people, not myself, kind of gave him before the season, he's still going to be a very elite player at the NHL level. And again, it's an added plus for the Calgary Flames, who have dealt with players not wanting to play in Calgary. The fact he's a Western Canadian kid. There's the pic that Flames fans post all the time online of him at a Flames game wearing a Flames jersey. So they get their franchise forward in their rebuild, retool kind of, immediately becomes one of the best in the NHL by getting this pick. Knowing their luck, they're probably going to pick third. They're probably going to finish 3rd and then pick 5th or something like that. But at 2nd overall, the St. Louis Blues, I'm going to go with Keaton Verhoff. I think that he is the 2nd best player, in my opinion, right now, as well as being the perfect fit for the St. Louis Blues. When looking at them on the right side of defense, they have Colton Parayko, and I think Keaton Verhoff can just be a better version of Colton Parayko. 2 big-ass dudes, very good defensively, but Keaton Verhoff has that potential to be that two-way top 8 to 15 defenseman in the NHL. He has a great shot on him, and as a result, as a defenseman at the college level, 4 goals, only 5 points, which I wasn't expecting that point per game. If he puts up 25, 30 points, it's a great season in 40 games for a defenseman at the college level. So yeah, for St. Louis, you look at them, they have a very intriguing young forward core of guys like Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, Holloway, Neighbors, Dvorsky, Snuggerud. So you would maybe consider Stenberg here or one of the forwards, but I think that Verhoff just makes the most sense considering they haven't really had that true number 1 defenseman since Alex Pietrangelo left. And I think he can kind of just be a replicate an Alex Pietrangelo kind of career in terms of maybe not Norris level, but consistently an elite 45 to 55 point number 1 defenseman. And yeah, they got Broberg on the left side as well. So they get their right-handed defenseman in the future, and their retool is kind of set if they end up finishing at the bottom and get a high pick, get a guy like Keaton Verhoff. They need to figure out what's going on with Joel Hofer, but the rest of the team is pretty damn young at this point, and injecting a top 5 pick would be really intriguing for the St. Louis Blues. At 3rd overall, the San Jose Sharks, I'm going to go with Ivar Stenberg. I know in terms of fit, a guy like Ryan Lynn, who I'm very high on, a right-handed defenseman, would be the best fit. But even as a guy that's very high on Ryan Lynn, I still think that the gap in terms of talent between Stenberg and Lynn, you go with the most talented guy. And if you're the San Jose Sharks, you just assemble, like, without a shadow of a doubt, the best top six, best forward core in the entire NHL throughout the entire 2030s. They'd have Celebrini, Misa, Eklund, Smith, Stenberg, Chernyshov, Graf, Musty, just talent galore. It would be absolutely insane. Yes, you would eventually have to some point figure out that right-handed defense, maybe a Noah Dobson kind of type. Not Noah Dobson himself comes on the market, but an elite right-handed defenseman, and then you just like trade a bunch of assets once it's really time to go, like the Montreal Canadiens did. But I think you just take the best player in Stenberg, considering what he's doing at the SHL level right now with 12 points in 17 games, more productive than guys like William Eklund, like Leo Carlsson, like Lucas Raymond in their respective draft years, more points per game at least right now, probably going to finish with more points. Overall, he is a dynamic playmaking winger, and he is taller than some reports have him. Like, you look at his hockey DB, and I think it says that he's like 5'9", he's like 5'11" or something like that. So he's not completely undersized, a little bit undersized, but the game-breaking playmaking abilities is why you go with him. And the idea of him playing with the Celebrini, playing with an Eklund on the same goddamn line as Smith, it's just so gross to pass up. So I think that he makes the most sense for the San Jose Sharks. At 4th overall, I don't anticipate the Minnesota Wild to stay within the top 5 of the 2026 draft, but if they are picking within the top 5, I think Tynan Lawrence out of the USHL makes the most sense for them. Not only is he probably the best player available at 4th overall, he's also the perfect fit. He's really the only center within like the consensus 6-7 of this draft, and for a team like Minnesota that has been badly lacking a high-end number 1 true center, I like Marco Rossi. Bill Guerin doesn't like Marco Rossi a lot, so I'm sure that he'd be happy selecting Tynan Lawrence. Joel Eriksson's a good player, a very good two-way center, but more of a second-line center, if we're going to be honest, even though he's my doppelganger on an actual contender. So Lawrence has the offensive traits, especially the skating, to potentially turn into that legit number 1 center. He was point per game last year in the USHL, was the best player on Muskegon when they ended up winning the Clark Cup in the USHL. This year, 2 points in 2 games. And yeah, he has the tools offensively to be something special alongside of Kirill Kaprizov. Him and Kirill Kaprizov off the rush in transition would be absolutely electric. So I think that he makes the most sense here for the Minnesota Wild. At 5th overall, the Vancouver Canucks, I have them taking Ethan Belchitz out of the OHL. Big boy. Big boy, 6'5", already like 230 pounds. And I think when they're watching Kiefer Sherwood have like 9 goals in 12 games, just beating the shit out of people, like leading the NHL in hits, they traded for Evander Kane. They clearly want to get a little bit more physical, continue to get more and more physical. And Belchitz is like the ideal Matthew Tkachuk, Brady Tkachuk, more so Brady Tkachuk kind of type in terms of that modern power forward. He was number 1 pick 2 years ago in the OHL, had a solid first year in the OHL, but this year he's really popping off, especially his goal scoring ability with 13 goals in 17 games and 22 points, and Vancouver is just able to form the trio of bang bros for the next 2 to 3 years, assuming that they re-sign Evander Kane. Belchitz is probably going to go top 5 just because of what he brings, both physically as well as having solid skill. I'm not sure that he has the skill to be like a line driver, legit top 80 player in the NHL, but in terms of a complementary piece to an Elias Pettersson, a physical force for Elias Pettersson, I think that could really work for the Vancouver Canucks. At 6th overall, the Nashville Predators. Here's where I go with Ryan Lynn. Last year, they took the center at 5th overall. I have them going with the right-handed defense. They have 2 solid defenseman prospects in Cam Reed and Tanner Molendyk, both on the left side. So Ryan Lynn, right-handed defense, very rare, hard to find. I think that he'd be a very solid pick for the Nashville Predators. I think he's personally underrated because he is 5'11", but he's so good defensively. His high IQ, positioning, it's all there with Ryan Lynn. Never going to be the most physical guy, but we've seen Quinn Hughes develop into an elite defensive defenseman because he is just so agile and so smart. I think Ryan Lynn, not saying he's going to be Quinn Hughes 2.0, but I think that he is going to be a very effective two-way defenseman at the NHL level. Last year was just below a point per game. This year, a little bit over a point per game in the WHL. I really like Ryan Lynn. Hopefully Barry Trotz really likes Ryan Lynn, because that would be a damn good pick at 7th overall for the Nashville Predators. At 7th overall, Ryan Rubrick to the Boston Bruins. Bruins probably would want a defenseman here. The only problem is I think Verhoff and Lynn are like the 1-2, and then it maybe drops off a little bit. Not saying like huge. We got other defensemen to talk about that are going in this mock draft, but I think Ryan Rubrick is still kind of in that tier, that second tier of guys, although he started off pretty slow in the OHL. The fact that this guy's 6'4" and has a damn elite shot. I think Don Sweeney last year, Hagens just kind of fell into his lap, so he had like no choice but to pick him, and it was a very good pick, don't get me wrong, but I think that you still think about the Boston Bruins, you think about Don Sweeney going out and getting a Tanner Janot. He still likes his big boys, and I think Ryan Rubrick alongside James Hagens on his wing would be amazing to watch. for the Boston Bruins, so they pick up a solid forward at 7th overall. At 8th overall, the Los Angeles Kings. I'm going to go with Xavier Villeneuve here. Hopefully, they would actually play him, unlike Brant Clark. But this guy has been ultra productive at the QMJHL every single year. In his draft year, -2. He put up like 0.8 points per game last year, point per game. In this season, 22 points in 17 games for Los Angeles. You could say maybe they need a forward. They do have some young forwards on the roster, like Byfield, like Lafreniere, as well as Liam Greentree. In terms of defensemen, last year they did go defense in the first round. I'm blanking on it. Who they selected? Brustevich. I forget which Brustevich, but they selected a Brustevich in the first round. But I think that Xavier Villeneuve is that modern puck-moving offensive defenseman while also having pretty solid defensive game. Not as good as like a Ryan Lynn. That's why I like Ryan Lynn a decent amount, but he's not some kind of liability defensively. And if they were able to select Villeneuve, they would have a damn good offensive defenseman duo in him and Brant Clark. For the New York Rangers, I'm going to be going with defenseman Carson Karls out of the WHL last year for Prince George Cougars. He had 35 points in 60 games this year, 13 and 15. Solid two-way guy, has some offense. And I think for the New York Rangers, their only real offensive defenseman right now is Adam Fox. Like, Braden Schneider's on the second power play. Nothing against Braden Schneider. Fine player, but they need some offensive pop from that blue line. Their one defenseman in the prospect pool of note is EJ Emery, who doesn't have much of an offensive game. So you positionally, like, they kind of need everything. Don't get me wrong. But Karls definitely fills a gap that they're going to have on the left side relatively soon and could run a second power play. And then lastly, for the Philadelphia Flyers at 10th/11th overall, the 10th pick, but 11th overall it would be, I got Vigo Bjork going to the Philadelphia Flyers. The hunt for a true number one center continues. Yet again, Bjork has played some center over in Sweden. He is a little bit undersized, but what this guy did last year in the U20 league in Sweden, as well as this year playing in the SHL, having 6 points in 15 games, pretty solid production for SHL. He's not even Ivar Stenberg, don't get me wrong, but still pretty productive, as well as 5 points in 4 games in the second tier league. But at this pick, he is by far the highest upside forward for Philadelphia, who should be swinging on upside in the idea of Bjork, Martone, and Michkov within their system, as well as now Trevor Zegras balling out, would be very intriguing for Philadelphia going forward. But yeah, here is the full top 10 at first overall. Gavin McKenna to the Calgary Flames. Shocker there. The St. Louis Blues pick up Keaton Veroff. Ivar Stenberg to the San Jose Sharks. Tynan Lawrence to the Minnesota Wild. Ethan Belchitz to the Vancouver Canucks. Ryan Lynn to the Nashville Predators. Ryan Rubrick to the Boston Bruins. Xavier Villeneuve to the Los Angeles Kings. Carson Karls to the New York Rangers. And Vigo Bjork to the Philadelphia Flyers. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this mock draft? This class is looking very weird. Some of the guys that I was expecting to have monster draft years are kind of underwhelming, like Ryan Rubrick. Mathis Preston only has like 12 points in 14 games in the WHL. That's why I left him off. He seems to be falling down boards. The Athletic had him like 28th in their personal rankings. It's interesting. It's very interesting how this draft is shaping up, and I think, unfortunately, it's looking a little bit underwhelming, if I'm going to be honest. But hey, at the end of the day, these things ebb and flow, and 2 months from now, guys could break out. We'll be talking about this being an all-time draft yet again, but let me know in the comments. What do you think about this? Who would you move up? Who would you move down? Who do you think is going to end up being the bottom 10 teams in the NHL, and why do you also agree the New York Islanders are going to jump from wherever they are to first overall to get Gavin McKenna? I'll be seeing the next one. Peace.